Hello, my name is Kelly Bannett, and I have the honor of serving as the Executive Vice President of Development for the Association of Graduates and the Air Force Academy Foundation. I am pleased to present this special episode of the Sabre Society podcast, which we have made available to a broader audience. Our guests today, Lieutenant Colonel Retired David Meyer and Dr. Chris Graw, will give you an overview of the Academic Success Center. They will also share examples of how your philanthropic support reinforces the Academic Success Center's mission. If you are currently a member of the Sabre Society, thank you for your leadership and steadfast support. We invite you to share this podcast with others and encourage them to join in giving back to USAFA. If you are not yet a member of the Sabre Society, we hope you enjoy this glimpse of how donors impact the Academy. You can learn more about the benefits of membership at usafa.org/sabre. That's usafa.org/SABRE. Thank you.
Greetings and thank you for joining us today. My name is Vince Greco and I am the Assistant Vice President of Strategic Partnerships for the Association of Graduates and the Air Force Academy Foundation. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank you for being a Sabre Society member. Your generous support of the U.S. Air Force Academy supports many programs that complement each of the Academy's mission elements. You are an important part of developing leaders of character who are ready to serve the Air Force, Space Force, and the nation. My guests today are two USAFA faculty members who serve in the Academic Success Center. Lieutenant Colonel Retired Dave Meyer, USAFA Class of 96, and Dr. Chris Graw. Colonel Meyer currently serves as the Director of the Quantitative Reasoning Center, and Dr. Graw is the Assistant Professor of Reading and Professional Communication. Welcome to the Sabre Society podcast, and thank you for being here, gentlemen. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having us, Vince.
You bet. Before we dive into our discussion today, I'd love for our listeners to get to know you two a little bit better. Colonel Meyer, you retired from the Air Force earlier this year after 28 years of service. I understand you spent the last 10 plus years teaching in the physics department before moving to the QRC. Can you share more about your time in the Air Force and what brought you back to the Academy to teach?
Absolutely. Thank you, Vince, for the invitation to come talk about the Academic Success Center. I'm a graduate from the Air Force Academy, class of 1996. I left the Academy, went off to pilot training, and I flew C-130s. I had two operational assignments operating the C-130 before being selected to go to the schoolhouse, and I finished up my time in Hercs at Little Rock Air Force Base, teaching the next generation how to operate the C-130. That was the first 12 years of my career, and I like to say that I've been fortunate to have two careers in the Air Force, because at that point, I was able to reinvent myself a little bit, come back to physics, and the physics department at the Academy sponsored me to get a master's degree at the Air Force Institute of Technology at AFIT. And I did that 2008 to 2010 before returning to be a faculty member. Loved that assignment, probably more than I expected to. I got to teach core and advanced physics classes and fly part-time as an instructor pilot in the glider squadron with the 94th.
Cool.
So really enjoyed my time at the Academy. I thought it would be a quick turn, 3 years, and then back to flying C-130s. But after a couple years here, I got the word that requalification slots were hard to come by in C-130s, and I'd likely not be going back to the Herc.
Right.
Some other airframes were available, but I took that opportunity to ask, well, could I be released for a second faculty assignment? The physics department was willing to sponsor me to go back through grad school, get a PhD in physics. So I did that and returned to the Academy for my second faculty assignment in 2015. I've been here almost continuously since then. In fact, in the last 16 years, aside from 3 months doing a fellowship at DARPA and 1 year deployed as the Chief of Safety for the Air Expeditionary Wing at Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE, I've been either at AFIT as a grad student studying physics or as a faculty member at the Air Force Academy trying to teach physics. As I approached retirement this last year, I looked for opportunities to be able to stick around here a little longer, continue contributing to what I think is a very important mission. For years, I had volunteered at the Quantitative Reasoning Center in the evening to help meet the demand, because when the QRC is busy, we are very busy. So I'd spent a lot of time down there. I knew the mission well, and I believed in the mission. So when an opportunity presented itself to join the QRC, I jumped at it. In this last spring semester, I transitioned into my current role as the director of the Quantitative Reasoning Center. I absolutely enjoy the fact that I get to work with the team that we have, outstanding professionals who are truly dedicated to seeing cadets grow and succeed. And I am fortunate to be where I am right now.
Well, we're fortunate to have you here as well. Thank you for the time you spend with our cadets in the academy and for your service in that C-130. Do you miss flying at all?
I do. I definitely miss that. It was easy to leave for a few years. Would have been harder had I known I'd not be going back to that airframe. Really love that mission too.
Oh, I bet. All right, Dr. Gra, you've been at the Academy for many years now. Can you tell us about your background and how you came to USAFA?
Sure. So my background's in professionally and educationally in applied linguistics. So that has to do with language and communication policy and education, improving those facets. And my PhD is from the University of Iowa. I spent about almost a decade at the State University of New York system, teaching, working with international and domestic students learning languages. And then I ended up going to Turkey to do a stint with the Department of State as a Fulbright fellow there. Also working with languages in southern Turkey at a university there. After that, I was at University of Kansas with ROTC, actually, doing a language scholarship program that supported ROTC students from all over the country in a variety of different critical languages. And so it was kind of a natural fit for me to end up at the Academic Success Center here at the Academy with my language and kind of communication background. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it here. I've been here for 2.5 years now, and it's been wonderful.
And we thank you for taking that time, because as we're going to find out throughout this program and this podcast, the importance of the Academic Success Center and what it's doing for cadets. And it's probably a good transition. Dr. Gra, can you give our listeners some background on the ASC? What is it? What services does it provide? And how many cadets actually use this center?
Yeah, so the Academic Success Center was really founded in 1998 to 99. And it's made up of 4 core programs, and internally we refer to those as our pillars, right? Dr. Meyer here will talk about the quantitative reasoning center in a moment, so I'll just kind of highlight the other 3. But essentially, what we're doing at the Academic Success Center is we are supporting a wide range of cadets, right? So a lot of people kind of assume that we're there as a remedial service. That is absolutely not true. We are supporting our kind of rising stars in cadets and also our superstars, right? Our shooting stars, as we refer to them, like Madison Marsh, Miss America, right? Coming through the center and just looking to elevate themselves just a little bit further to compete for scholarships and go to prestigious universities like Oxford, MIT, Harvard.
Right.
But yeah, so we're essentially using study skills and critical thinking, group sessions, individual sessions. We're trying to have our cadets excel academically and culturally, as I'll mention in a moment here as well. But yeah, now that I've given kind of a brief overview of the ASC, I'd like to talk about 3 of those 4 pillars. So we have the Strategies for Academic Success program, and that encompasses our Learning Strategies course. So Mr. Spencer Thomas, who we'll get to, I'm sure, down the road here, works with that program, as well as 2 first-year lieutenants. And they're working with 230 academically and culturally. And he wanted to emphasize culturally there because it's such a huge shift for them. Many of these students who are coming from very diverse backgrounds, coming to this institution, it is, kind of challenging for them to adjust and adapt to the culture here. And so, like I said, 230 academically underprepared cadets every year. And then within that program, we also have English for academic purposes, which Miss Connie Leonard works with. And so she is working with EAP courses as well as the ESL designation for domestic international cadets, 4-year and semester exchange. And then we have the Communication Strategies Center. So that's the second of our four pillars here. That is what I'm working with. And so we have the Communication Strategies course, which is a brand new course. It's 1 credit. It's graded. It's the most popular elective at the Academy. And so we're teaching writing, reading, and public speaking in that course. Freshman-wise, we're having about half of the incoming freshman class take that course. So it's an immensely popular course. We also have the Writing Center, which I'm the lead of here at the Academy, and we also have the Public Speaking Lab, which Dr. Dan Johnson and Mr. Iberi Shea work with. So between those 3 programs, we're seeing a huge number of cadets, and a lot of people don't realize, and this is the same for the QRC, but especially the Writing Center and Public Speaking Lab, we're open morning, afternoon, and evening. We're closing at 8:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday, right? And so we are there all day long, and as Dr. Meyer will say here in a moment, our evening is our busiest time. Right. And so we're kind of there at any time for cadet support. So then we have the Graduate Studies and Scholarship Program. That's the third of our 4th pillar. And so we're seeing about 15 to 20% of graduating seniors, right, first degrees, going to grad school straight out of USAFA, right? And so that program is there to support them both through domestic and international programs and scholarships. So they're getting scholarships like the Rhodes, Marshall, Truman, Fulbright, Knight Hennessy, really prestigious scholarships. So that's kind of an overview of 3 of our 4 pillars and kind of what we do. I'd also like to mention, just how much we've grown, because one of your questions there was how many cadets are using the center, right?
Right.
And so we are seeing about 8,000 cadet contacts per year. Okay. And so to give you an idea of the growth though, and where we've come since 98, 99, the Writing Center alone in the past decade has gone from about 500 appointments annually to now 1,600 appointments annually. And we're doing that with pretty much the same intact faculty and staff structure that we've had over the last 10 years.
Wow. That's a lot of cadets. That's a lot of hours that you guys spend in there. Now rethinking this, I probably should have come to the communications lab before this podcast. It probably could have helped me out a little bit.
I don't know about that.
Preparation for this.
But I think you should come to teach our cadets.
I don't know about that. Well, let's move on. Dr. Meyer, the Quantitative Reasoning Center is used heavily by cadets. Many of our listeners may appreciate knowing more about the QRC, what it is, and what it does. Can you tell us more about that QRC and the learning opportunity it provides our cadets?
Absolutely. The Quantitative Reasoning Center is one of the newer components of the Academic Success Center. We stood up the QRC about 15 years ago, and it's a big part of the growth story that Dr. Gra is talking about. We see this last year 6,000 contacts with cadets. Primary subjects we cover are calculus, chemistry, physics, and mechanical engineering. We try to provide supplemental extra instruction for cadets when their primary instructors are not available. The Air Force Academy has a long culture of faculty being available to cadets. Faculty don't set limited office hours when they're available. We tend to be available whenever cadets need us. We bend over backwards to find times that work with the faculty schedule and a cadet schedule. But when that doesn't work, the quantitative reasoning fills in. So our primary hours are between 1600 and 2030, so 4 to 8:30 in the evenings when most of the faculty are on their way home. We provide that bridge for cadets that show up maybe with gaps in their background. Every cadet finds challenge somewhere in the Academy program, but when they find that challenge in a STEM course, we're there to support them. And we primarily cover core courses and try to focus on cadets during their first 2 years at the Academy, helping to shore up those fundamentals early in their time. Quantitative Reasoning Center directly supports 4 of the Academy's 9 institutional outcomes. So clear communication, critical thinking, scientific reasoning and the principles of science, and the application of engineering problem-solving methods are all within the skill set that we try to develop in cadets. We are growing to meet growing demand. Mm-hmm. We're up 25% or so over the last 2 years in the number of contacts. So we're adding additional faculty members this year. And what I'm trying to do as the director is grow the QRC in a way that maintains what has made it successful. We don't want to break the model by just growing too fast or trying to expand into too many areas. But we are looking to add statistics to the courses that we're able to support within the math department and expanding this semester into computer science as well.
You talked about briefly EI, extra instruction, and I'm certain probably every member of this audience, if they're a graduate of this institution, has gone through EI. My daughter's a 2017 grad, smart kid, but spent a lot of time in EI to stay off of ACPRO. What's the difference between EI and the Academic Success Center, or are they interwoven?
They're definitely interwoven. The QRC focuses on specific subjects, on core STEM courses, but we are part of the Academic Success Center in that every cadet has different needs, and we try to meet them where they are, get them from where they arrive to where they need to be to thrive going forward.
And for both of you, and I think you really just touched on this, what makes the ASC different from like a tutoring service? Is it because you just said you kind of tailor it to each individual, or there's just that more one-on-one contact with cadets?
I would say there's a couple key differences. One, the faculty that we have in the QRC are highly qualified. They teach courses within the department they're associated with which they're associated. That lets them know very well, not just their material, but how is that material covered? How is it emphasized in courses at the Air Force Academy? So faculty who really know what's going on and faculty who have the experience to quickly diagnose what is the challenge that a particular cadet is facing. We go way beyond helping cadets get through their homework. That's what they come to us sometimes looking for is, I'm stuck on a problem, I want to get through this problem, but we take a step back and we try to diagnose what's the root cause of that problem. Sometimes it's a misconception from earlier in the course. Sometimes it's a math tool that they saw in high school that they just haven't used for a while. So we step back, we try to build those fundamental skills, get them to a point where they're ready to proceed and succeed going forward.
Dr. Gra, do you find that young freshmen, fourth degree cadets are a little bit apprehensive because they're not embarrassed, but I don't need to go to the ASC because I'm already smart enough, but they're not. They need this. And how do they get across that line to say, I need some help here?
Yeah, that's a great question. I honestly feel like for the Writing Center, at least, we don't see that too much. The majority of the cadets who we work with are freshmen.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, I'd say it's about 65% of cadet traffic in the Writing Center. Those are freshman students, right? And so one thing that we are trying to do, at least from the Writing Center's perspective, is going into the classes themselves. Right, English 111 is a core class. Our goal is to hit every single, I think there's 52 sections of English 111, right? So you're having the vast majority of freshmen taking that course. We want to go in there and we want to show those cadets how to register for an appointment, how to create an account, right, on MyWC Online, which is the service we use to make appointments, and also very briefly model how those sessions look like, right? And so they no longer feel nervous. And they understand that when they come to us, yes, they're being a little vulnerable and asking for help, but it's a very normal thing, right? And that's really key to us.
Let's talk a little bit about the why behind the Academic Success Center. Dr. Gra, your colleague Spencer Thomas oversees strategies for academic success. Why do you think this foundational program is so critical for today's cadets?
So I'm happy to answer that question. I actually talked to Mr. Thomas beforehand, just so I could get some of his insights. He's been at the institution for a number of years, right? And he was telling me that, because they're working with these academically vulnerable populations that are coming into the academy from such diverse backgrounds, it's really key to build their confidence and kind of help them find their place in the cadet wing, right? So the learning strategies course, though, that Mr. Thomas and his 2 first-year lieutenants teach, they're really focusing on 6 distinct strategies. They're focusing on self-testing, elaboration, interleaving, dual coding, concrete examples, and space practice. And that is all designed to equip these cadets with the skills they need to handle the rigorous curriculum at the academy, right? And at the end of the day, the program works. One statistic he gave me that was shocking to hear, right? These are the most vulnerable, academically at-risk cadets coming into the academy their freshman year.
Right.
And he was telling me that the alum that graduated last year, less than 1% of them were disenrolled for academic purposes. That's amazing.
It is amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
To think about kind of the turnover in the cadet wing, especially after freshman year where they just realize they can't handle it. And he's doing such a fantastic job using these evidence-based practices that that is not really a reason they're leaving. Because of the main reason they're in the program, their academic vulnerability, they're not actually leaving because of that. So, it's a fantastic program, and it's very valued. You always see cadets just sitting outside Mr. Thomas's door waiting to talk to him, and they come back year after year after year. It's wonderful to see.
Dave, many graduates didn't have access to a resource like the ASC when they were cadets here at the Academy. As a graduate yourself, what would you like the graduate community to know about the ASC and why it's so necessary?
Grads know that the Air Force Academy is a challenging program.
Yeah.
Very few cadets arrive prepared for everything that they're going to face. Cadets struggle in different areas, find challenges in different areas, but when they find those challenges in their STEM courses, a resource like the Quantitative Reasoning Center, when they find those challenges, putting together a paper or preparing for a presentation, resources like the Writing Center, the Public Speaking Lab, they're critical. They may make the difference for some cadets between passing a course and not passing a course. When a cadet doesn't pass a course, they're either retaking it or they're facing disenrollment for not passing that course. So we can help cadets get over the bar in that sense, but we do a lot more than that. Some cadets are trying to just maintain the A that they've already got in a course or turn a B into an A so that they can be competitive for those scholarships, for AFSCs that are very selective, to keep them on their desired path. So we help cadets throughout the entire range of academic performance. For the Quantitative Reasoning Center, another key group that we support is the cadet or are the cadets that arrive wanting a STEM major and they find some bumps in the road and maybe don't have the ability to persist in that. In a typical class, 300 to 400 cadets show up saying they want to pursue a STEM major and then ending up on a different path. There's a lot of reasons that can happen. If they find their passion somewhere else, if they're drawn to another discipline, if they figure out that the political science degree or the military strategic studies degree aligns with their career goals, that's great. If they switch from a STEM path because they don't think they can make it or because they can't find the resources that help them persist in that major, that's where I think there's an issue, and that's where we'd like to dig in and build that bridge for the cadets that find themselves struggling early.
It sounds like it's working for sure. Dr. Grah, in today's society, I think when we look at some of our middle school students, our high school students, it's a world of technology. They have a phone at their hands. They're doing their homework on their computer. Do you find that sometimes these cadets are coming to your part of the Academic Success Center for writing skills or public speaking? They lack a little bit because of that, because especially the public speaking part, they're hiding behind a phone or a computer when if they're going to go for an interview, whether it's Zoom, whether it's in person, you have to be prepared for that. So I guess what am I saying? Do you see a lot of cadets utilizing your services because of that reason?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Much like the QRC, we're seeing explosive growth in the Writing Center, Public Speaking Lab, and with our ComStrats course. And it's for a variety of reasons, right? I think, first of all, the leap from high school to, as I mentioned before, the rigorous curriculum at the academy is a lot. And I know Dave just mentioned that as well. And many of the students, they are used to kind of just being that top dog at their school.
Yeah.
And suddenly they come to the academy and, they're being asked to dissect a peer-reviewed journal article their freshman year, or write a FIRAC outline for a law course. They don't know how to do that. Right. And so it's something that we're here to support. And I think so many of the cadets are, at least from the writing side that I can speak to, they're not adequately prepared at the secondary level for many of the technical aspects of literacy development. So we oftentimes are requested Colonel Jimmy Bowers requests us to come in to do technical workshops. We've done multiple technical writing workshops for STEM fields as well, physics and genetics, right? So it's just they don't have that exposure to those kind of research-based writing and they aren't receiving the detailed feedback that they need for that. And I think I can speak to this too as someone who does have a secondary education background. I don't think that our elementary and secondary teachers have the resources available to them to teach these kind of things, because at the end of the day, they are trying to teach their kids how to be functional members of society first and foremost, right? After that, then they are able to focus on their content area. But even then, they have this looming preparation for high stakes standardized testing that they have to keep in mind when they're teaching their content area, right? And then you throw in the COVID-19 pandemic, which is where we're seeing this huge growth, especially. And we have essentially a generation of students coming into the academy and elsewhere who had their learning interrupted, right? And so I think between that and the lack of time to prepare students for these more technical aspects of speaking and writing and reading, we're seeing this an ever-growing number of cadets, current and future, who have gaps in their reading, writing, and public speaking.
All right, let's talk a little bit, if we can, about the cadets now and in the future, and how the ASC can benefit them. Dr. Meyer, you went through the academy, you served in the Air Force. What skills does the ASC impart that help cadets succeed as officers after they leave the academy?
Yeah, it's a great question. I highlighted our role helping cadets make it through their math, their chemistry, physics, engineering courses, and that is a key part of our role, but I like to think we do more. I tell cadets often that at their core, officers in the military are problem solvers. We develop problem-solving skills through practice. The broad core program that the Air Force Academy requires every cadet to go through, regardless of their major, will have courses that allow them or require them to practice problem-solving in many disciplines across many situations. Not the exact problems they're going to solve as officers. I'm under no illusion that cadets are going to be repeating the calculations that they do in a physics classroom, or they're going to be balancing the equation that describes a chemical reaction as officers. That probably won't come up for most career fields. But what they will see are complicated problems, multi-part problems, and problems where they don't think they have all the information they need. So we build those skills to take a complicated problem, break it up into parts, analyze what do I know, what do I need to know, and those are the skills that I think translate directly into their role as officers in the Air Force or the Space Force. We're trying to give them those skills that help them tackle the challenges they'll see down the road.
Dr. Grahl, how does the ASC fit into the Academy's larger mission of developing leaders of character? I think Dave earlier talked about the QRC follows 4 of the USAFA's institutional outcomes. I think that the ASC is trying to follow all 9 of those, if I'm not mistaken. But how do you see this fit in, again, for the whole big picture of developing leaders of character?
Sure, that's a great question. So I feel like, as I mentioned previously, so many of the incoming cadets are used to being successful, right? And when they come into the academy, suddenly they don't have unlimited time to study for that calculus test or to write that philosophy paper. We always say time is the number one resource for these cadets, right?
Right.
Because of their military training, because of their athletics. And, it really requires them to either potentially fail or make themselves more vulnerable and ask for help. And I think that second component there of learning to ask for help and learning to go to others with more expertise or knowledge in a subject area than they may have turns them into better leaders of character when they're actually officers in our Air Force or Space Force, right? And it allows them to be comfortable going to a senior airman or a colonel and saying, hey, you know more about this than I do, or maybe you have a different perspective on this. Let's kind of add your opinion or your thoughts to this discussion. So I think that's part of it. And another part of it is in the ASC, for the courses we teach and the sessions we do, there is a kind of a collaborative model that we use, right? It's interactive, it's collaborative. So for example, if a cadet's coming to the Writing Center, the very first thing I'll ask them in a one-on-one session is, what can we support you with? Lead us through your process here of writing this, whether it's an outline or a paper that's intact, and tell me how I can help you, right? And so we really start a conversation there. And then by the time they're leaving the session, we're coming up with a list of their next steps together, right? We're saying, hey, we talked about this in the session. We talked about that in the session. Why don't you give me an idea of what you think the next step should be when you leave today in the writing process, right? And I think as they come, and sometimes we'll see cadets 10, 15, 20 times in an academic year, they develop those skills and we can remove that scaffolding,
Right.
and they can use more critical thinking and the established skills that they developed in these sessions with us in the QRC, in the Writing Center, and in the Public Speaking Lab to improve their study skills and their ability to learn outside of our sessions.
I think because of some of the excellent work that you all are doing, the faculty is doing, the senior staff is doing, the foundation is doing, there are more and more scholarship opportunities for our cadets. And it seems that it's growing more and more every year, which is a wonderful thing. I think maybe 10% of the class may be able to go off and go to a graduate program after they leave here. Talk a little bit about how the Graduate Studies and Scholarship Program works that helps these cadets get to that next step.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we love Dr. Meisenhelder. Dr. Helen Meisenhelder is the director of that program.
Right.
And her assistant, Miss Jelena Nagel. The two of them are that program. Right, which is kind of impressive because, as you said, and actually the number that you gave, the 10%, this past year, we saw a record, almost 25%
Wow.
of the senior class went to grad school. So you can imagine almost everyone, probably all of those cadets are going through this program
Absolutely.
to help them prepare to apply for scholarships and to apply for graduate school. And, coming from that Writing Center perspective, this summer, we had like 75 appointments that were just graduate school applications. And you got to remember, these cadets are not just applying to one school. They're sometimes applying to 10 schools, right? And so what GSS does, Graduate Schools Studies and Scholarships, is they host workshops, they host sessions, dozens of them every year to prepare cadets to apply for these scholarships and these graduate programs. They explain to them what their opportunities are, how the application process works, what the deadlines are, and then they're there to support them every step along the way. The Writing Center and Public Speaking Lab do a lot as well with kind of preparing them for their interviews. Dr. Johnson does a fantastic job kind of grilling the cadets with questions, recording them, making sure that they feel confident when they go into those interviews. And some of those interviews, we've had cadets are allowed to book out the Public Speaking Lab because it's this professional recording environment. And some of those interviews last all day long. So you can imagine these cadets coming in and needing to prepare. And so Graduate Studies and Scholarships does a fantastic job using its resources in the ASC And also outside of the ASE, we rely, I know Dr. Meisenhelder does a fantastic job setting up contacts with different faculty at the academy. Dr. Richard Johnson, for example, is the head of the Fulbright Committee. And so we will ask them a bunch of questions. We'll review their applications. We'll give them feedback. And so they're getting a ton of support. They're not just going in blind in applying to these programs. GSS does a wonderful job setting up an environment where they can feel comfortable asking for help and also providing them as much advice as possible.
I think that part of the success of the Academic Success Center is building relationships. In my job as a development guy for the foundation, it's engaging with grads, right? It's talking about the school, the great things that we're all doing here. Same for the ASC. I would think these relationships that you build with these cadets, Dave, one of the unique aspects of your work is that you spend a ton of time with these cadets, both one-on-one and in small groups. Can you describe that dynamic and the relationship built along the way?
Absolutely. As a faculty member, our role in the classroom is very important and is a lot of fun, it's very rewarding. But the one-on-one interaction, the extra instruction environment is definitely more rewarding. Cadets are fascinating individuals. Getting to know them on that level is a lot of fun, and I've always enjoyed that in my time in the Department of Physics and Meteorology. Watching someone grow beyond what they thought their limitation was, or get confidence as they figure something out that they thought was just that little bit beyond them is very satisfying. The interaction I have with cadets in the Quantitative Reasoning Center is even more enjoyable because the cadets are a little different in that environment. They're often more comfortable opening up to us about where they're confused because we don't give them a grade. We're there purely to help them understand something that is very challenging. So they will expose where they're confused, where they're behind. They don't try to hide it the same way they might with their classroom instructor. We have a large number of regular visitors that come down. About this last year, it was about 45% of the cadet wing, the lower two classes that used the QRC at some point during that time. But the average number of visits is about 6. But we have some cadets that will come down 30, 40 times during a semester to see instructors with multiple courses. So it's not every cadet. It's not a resource that's really needed by every cadet, but the ones who need us, they visit on a regular basis. And one of the things we're always trying to do is a little bit put ourselves out of business with those cadets. We do more than just help them in their primary course. We're trying to give them study skills, coach them on problem-solving techniques, time management skills, help them become independent learners, and confidence is a big part of that. Get to the point that they need to rely on us less.
Right.
We see some indications that is the case. I mentioned about 6,000 cadets came to visit us last year. Well, that was not even across the semesters. It was about 3,500 in the fall, 2,500 in the spring. So within the 4-degree class and the 3-degree class, we see a little bit of that decreased reliance on the Quantitative Reasoning Center as their courses progress. And that's a good thing. We want them to become independent, and we want them to learn how they learn. Cadets don't have as much time to put into every course as they would like. So efficiency is really the goal in helping prepare them for the more rigorous courses that are coming down the line.
Dr. Gra, we talk about the Academic Success Center. Give us a couple of examples of some of those success stories.
Yeah, I'd love to. So just to get the specifics right, I'm going to read a little bit off
That's
of
great.
here. Second Lieutenant Madison Marsh, I think everyone knows her, Miss America, right? Class of 2023. She had a great relationship. She actually shouted out our public speaking lab in her speech here at was that NCLS? And she worked with Dr. Johnson there, Mr. Iberi Shea, to prepare for interviews and her pageant competitions. I remember personally seeing her for writing center consultations as well. And she would often meet, she mentions our QRC faculty, Dr. Amani Anderson, and other members of the STEM support team for mentorship. And I think she's a perfect example of a success story. Another one that I'd like to mention, Second Lieutenant Cole Phelps, former D1 wrestler at the Academy, class of 2021. He's in his 4th year of medical school.
Wow.
And is currently at Wright-Patterson doing an internship to prepare for his residency. Cole was actually a learning strategy student. So he was one of Mr. Thomas's students, meaning, like I mentioned before, he was at risk coming into the academy from an academic standpoint. And he used the Writing Center, Public Speaking Lab, Graduate Studies and Scholarships, all of our programs pretty much. And lastly, I'd like to highlight Aramis Brown, class of 2021. He used the ASC's Writing Center, QRC, Graduate Studies and Scholarships, and he ended up accepting a Rhodes Scholarship, definitely one of our high flyers that worked a lot with GSS.
Some great stories.
Yeah.
Again, I've always said, and I truly believe, and you all would know better than anybody else, that through these programs at the Academic Success Center, extra instruction, the academy does not set you up to fail. If you put in the work, you're gonna get through. You're gonna make it. Would you agree with that?
I would. We like to say that there should be a path to success for every cadet. Doesn't mean every cadet is going to make it. They do have to work. It is going to be challenging for anyone. But if they will follow the path, we just want to give them the resources that can get them from where they are when they arrive to where the Air Force or the Space Force needs them to be upon graduation.
Well said. Part of my job, well, the biggest part of my job at the foundation is supporting the needs of the dean, the superintendent, things that may not always get covered by the federal government. And the dean has made it very clear that one of her top priorities is the Academic Success Center. And for this to continue to do the great work that it's doing, we're going to have to lean on outside support. We're going to need donors to step up. And many already have. Some have come to the plate and help. Dr. Groh, can you give us some examples of how maybe donors have helped in your department?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, donations have been absolutely instrumental in really the growth of the Communication Strategy Center. The Public Speaking Lab, which I've mentioned a number of times, 5 years ago didn't exist, right? And so to create a program that has seen 400 appointments this last year and is continuing to grow very rapidly. It's been amazing having donor funds to buy furniture for an empty room.
Absolutely.
Tables, chairs, a couch. We also were able to buy teleprompters so that cadets could actually practice their speeches. Almost like in a session, an environment like this, it's essentially a recording studio at this point, right? And so we've seen a lot of cadets coming in and using those services. For the Writing Center in particular, this year alone, and I mentioned we have about 16 full-time majority professors in the Academic Success Center, and then we have our 2 first-year lieutenants. But this year alone, we have 3 part-time donor-funded positions in the Writing Center that are going to be there in the evenings, and these are highly qualified people. A former colonel who has a doctorate, Dr. Rick B. Wright, is going to be there. Dr. Paul Nagy from Pikes Peak Community College is going to be there. And then we have a reporter editor from the Gazette who also works in the Writing Center. Very qualified individuals, fully donor funded. They're all part-time. They work in the evenings. Those 3 are going to be there this year. And I was just going to mention, since 2020, more than 3,500 Writing Center appointments have been from donor-funded faculty. That's 60% of all of the Writing Center appointments. And you're probably thinking, well, wait, why aren't you using your faculty as the majority of those appointments? Well, those faculty are teaching 3 to 4 sections of a class at a time. They're doing advising, and then they're doing those appointments on top of that. And so in addition to any administrative responsibilities that they may have. So they don't necessarily have a whole ton of time to handle those sessions, which is where that surge support from donor funded, means is really impactful in the ASC. We just absolutely would not be able to keep up with this growing demand. As I mentioned before, year after year, we're seeing continual growth, and those donor funds have been instrumental.
Dr. Meyer, how about you?
The Quantitative Reasoning Center is in a very similar position where donor funds have been the reason we've been able to expand and meet the surge demand for cadets. So one of the ways we've used donor funds is purchasing equipment, IT support equipment. We purchased some webcams, which were critical during the COVID pandemic when we were all remote instruction, but they've been very helpful since then because they allow us to provide more effective group EI to intercollegiate teams while they're traveling. Intercollegiate athletes have very busy schedules, but they often have some downtime on the road. So if they can dial back and have a virtual meeting with a faculty member in the QRC, they're playing a little bit less catch up when they come back to town. So the webcams and microphones have been very helpful for that. We also purchased iPads for faculty, which are helpful for accurately accounting for sign-in. Mm-hmm. So we were trying to track utilization because that's what helps steer us toward the most efficient use of our resources. So the iPads help with that. They also allow us to display, to wirelessly link cadet work with our monitors and our TVs so that we can talk about the cadets' actual problem-solving approach or pull up graphics that help just make the extra instruction a little bit more effective. But the larger impact of the donor funds has been, like the Academic Success Center, being able to fund part-time faculty.
Right.
So this past spring, we had 2 donor-funded part-time faculty members covering calculus and physics. Mm-hmm. Those 2 individuals covered over 260 appointments and helped out with over 100 walk-in EI sessions. Mm-hmm. So really expanded the capability, our capacity, I should say. The demand for extra instruction in the evening is not even throughout the semester.
Right.
It wouldn't surprise you to see that it spikes in the week or 10 days before major exams or before major assignments are due. So being able to flex and meet that demand with part-time faculty has been really, really important. It's hard to gauge how much unmet demand there is. When all the appointments for a week are full, mm-hmm. Right. We don't know, mm-hmm. Is that because that's all the cadets that were looking for help, or are there another 100 out there that wish they could have gotten an appointment and couldn't? So right. We are trying to expand. We use the part-time donor funds. We also ask academic departments for help, mm-hmm. Especially in the evening, to meet the very busy nights, and they've been helpful with that. And we're trying to expand our reach. Intercollegiate athletes, as I said, have very busy schedules. Mm-hmm. Their practice schedule makes it tough to find time to meet their primary instructors or to take advantage of the QRC until those last couple hours in the evening. So starting this semester, we're going to be expanding into afternoon hours at the cadet gym. We have a new facility that we're starting this week to try to provide some extra instruction to intercollegiate athletes mm-hmm. before practice, as well as being open for them after practice in our primary facility. So the donor funds, I would say it's critical to helping do exactly what we've been talking about here
Sure.
today, right? Meeting cadets where they are and getting them to where they need to be. We have good resources, but being able to continue the expanded capacity into the future is going to be more and more important.
Donor support has helped faculty positions somewhat. It could be better. I know it, and you all know it, but also the space. We had a donor come up with a great space for our honors program. You all are operating in the basement of Fairchild and mm-hmm. in different areas that probably could use a facelift. So donor support could help in that realm as well.
Oh, immensely. Yeah. That's I know our director, Dr. Carrie McKeag, is really hoping that one day we'll have our own space mm-hmm. Because of just, this increasing demand we're seeing year over year, and just the thousands and thousands of, like I said, 8,000 cadet contacts per year that we're seeing. It's continuing to grow. We really have outgrown our space. We've run out of room to house everyone.
Well, it's been a great session. You guys are heroes. You what you do for the Academy, what you do for our cadets. Thank you for that. It's greatly appreciated, not just from the Foundation and the Association of Graduates, but we've talked about these giant numbers of cadets that are utilizing the Academic Success Center. I'm sure they're thankful as well. So
wonderful. Yeah, I was going to say, we really appreciate you, Vince, and the Foundation as well for spotlighting us. It's been tremendous just to be able to kind of share our message with your audience and the Sabre Society.
Well, thanks for being here. That's all we have for today. Thank you, Colonel Meyer and Dr. Groff, for your joining us here today. It's been excellent. Before we wrap up, I also want to extend my sincere thanks to each of you for supporting the Academy. Your membership in the Sabre Society and generous gifts to the Air Force Academy Fund are critical resources that support not only the work of the association and foundation, but also the mission of the United States Air Force Academy. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
As Colonel Meyer and Dr. Gross shared, your generosity is making a life-changing impact on cadets and defining the future of the Academy. Sabre Society donors are essential to our efforts at the Association and Foundation. Your investment supports the Academy's strategic priorities and immediate needs, bolsters graduate programs and services, and elevates the cadet experience from adequate to exceptional. Thank you for all you're doing to support the Academy.